previous videos, we have been exploring the importance of fluid management on an HED job site. One of the critical components considered was creating the proper mud mixture for your operation. Now the question is, how do you conserve water and additives while minimizing the amount of mud being hauled off for disposal? Let's discuss the use of reclaimers, also known as mud recyclers. These machines play a key role in fluid management as contractors continually strive to become more efficient. Reclaimers recycle drilling fluid, resulting in less fluid disposal and lower additive consumption. So talking through that, why are reclaimers becoming more popular on HED job sites?
We're definitely seeing a trend in the industry where there's increasing disposal costs associated with disposing of drilling fluids. That's one thing and one reason why we're seeing more and more contractors show interest in utilizing reclaimers on their projects. There's other things that are also driving that. The amount of dump sites that are available to them are becoming less and less across the country. So finding a close place that's in proximity to their project can be a challenge. Also, when you look about transportation costs, having trucks on the road hauling that fluid from the job site to the disposal site, back to the job site, there's a big cost associated with that and a liability because you have trucks on the road. Another thing that we've heard from different contractors is it's becoming more and more challenging to find drivers with that are qualified with CDLs to be able to drive the trucks. So these are all things that are factors into why more and more contractors are showing interest and talking about integrating a reclaiming system into their HD project. We talked earlier in one of our previous videos about mud recycling systems traditionally in the past have been associated with large horizontal directional drills or larger projects. But now due to these types of costs that the utility contractors are starting to have to deal with, we're starting to see more and more of them try to figure out a way and a method where they can utilize or integrate that reclaimer into their projects.
Yeah, so it's not so much just affecting a portion of our contractors or customers, it's now affecting the entirety, right? It's affecting that contractor that owns our core lineup of drills that is also worried about these same aspects of the job site and disposal costs. So, with that, what are key benefits of introducing a reclaimer in HED operation?
In the right formations and in the right ground conditions, if you're utilizing a recycler on a project, you can retain anywhere from 70 to 80% of the fluid that you're pumping down the borehole. So when you put that in perspective, if I'm starting off with 1,000 gallons of fresh fluid in the morning and I can continually retain 70% of that throughout the day, that is dramatically decreasing the amount of haul-offs that I am going to have to do throughout the day, throughout the overall project to dispose of that used drilling fluid. And as I said earlier, with that comes reduced cost overall related to the project as a whole because I'm minimizing my disposal fees, I'm reducing the amount of trucks that I have to make trips to and from the disposal site. So that is really one of the biggest benefits of bringing a reclaiming system into the project versus a traditional method of hauling fresh water in regularly throughout the day, mixing every so often. If you can retain 70% of that fluid, you're saving all on additives, you're saving on fresh water costs, you're saving on drilling time potentially, waiting on the truck to come back or the vac truck to come back to the job. So those are some of the key benefits of how a reclaimer can benefit a contractor on a project.
Yeah, so it's not so much just on the back end, right, of having the equipment there necessary to haul that fluid to the disposal site, but it is the fresh water aspect. It's both on the front end and on the back end.
Yeah, correct, for sure.
So John, could you tell me a little bit more, how does a reclaimer work? Or what are the different processes in which a reclaimer goes through in order to be able to clean that fluid?
I think the first thing we kind of need to look at is what size reclaimer do I need? We have a reclaimer that will reclaim the fluids for a variety of different directional drills. What's our hole diameters? What size drill do we have? What the pump output is? We'll get into that a little bit later. Most of the applications we have are mobile systems. You want the reclaimer to be set up where you need it, as you need it. The process begins with water, like we talked about earlier. But we didn't elaborate on that. You know, if you take a really hard look at it, almost 98% to 97% of that drilling fluid is actually water. So whenever we look at the additives, even if we use a 5 or 6 bag mix, we're still at 98% water by weight. So how does this process begin? I mean, number one, we mix our additives, we mix our bentonite, and then we start pumping it through a charge pump over to the high pressure pump. The high pressure pump then will transfer that fluid under pressure to the drill string or to the drill. It'll go down the bore path through the tooling. Then it'll actually come back out the drill path, and it'll be carrying a lot of solids with it. And the solids are going to be very dependent on what I'm drilling through. What is my formation I'm drilling through? Am I drilling through chunk rock? Am I drilling through sand? So all those cuttings are going to come back to what we call a pit, whether it's on the entry side or the exit side. And we're going to pick that up with a pit pump. The pit pump is going to then move that slurry up to the first stage, which is a scalping shaker. So the scalping shaker is going to take out the larger particles. Then it's going to what we call dewater. So it's going to dry out those particles and go off the end of the shaker. The fluid that actually makes it through that shaker will then go into what we call the scalped tank. We have another pump in there that will suck that fluid up, and then it'll go through the second stage of the process. Each stage is going to be getting finer and finer as far as the separation points go. So in some of our smaller systems, that could just be from the scalp tank or the scalper to a desilter. And our larger HDD recyclers will go from scalpers to desanders to desilters. All those are hydrocyclones. So that's how the process begins. And then what we have to look at also is that we're not only doing this one time through the hydrocyclones. It'll be going through multiple passes. Every time you can make a pass through a hydrocyclone, that fluid actually will become cleaner and cleaner. At which point the fluid will end up in the clean side tank, and then it's ready to be pumped back to the high pressure pump and back to the drill again.
Thank you for elaborating through that. You know, you brought up a point that made me think through. So, you know, you talked about a 4 or 5 bag mix, you know, and you referred to bentonite, but what other drilling fluid additives, you know, what impact can they have on the overall reclaimer performance?
So we talked about water being the, you know, the main body of our drilling fluid, but a lot of our equipment, hydrocyclones, shakers, all that is based on water. It's not based on heavy muds or anything else. The performance is actually based on water. So if I have a high viscosity bentonite, it will start affecting the hydrocyclones a little bit because it wants to carry the particles through as you try to use centrifugal force to separate those particles. Bentonite is not one of the most detrimental ingredients to drilling fluid that inhibits that separation. What really starts inhibiting the separation is polymers, because they want to collect those solids. They want to carry them out, just like you would in your bore path. Okay, I got my bore path's here. I'm trying to carry out these solids out of the bore path. My hydrocyclones or even my shaker is trying to separate them using gravity. And so whenever I put those additives in there, I'm actually trying to fool gravity, right? So it takes more gravity to try to separate those particles away whenever I'm using, for instance, a PHPA polymer. So that'll interfere with separation. Also a PAC, PAC polymer. What it does is wants to create a filter cake. Well, I'm trying to seal off my hole. So what does that do to my shakers? Well, those are very, very fine mesh screens. So we'll start sealing off my shaker screens. So the additives that you use, which are doing a great job downhole, may interfere with the separation of a recycler.
So that same person that might be mixing or adding new bentonite to the reclaimer or to that fluid over the course of the day, they're too monitoring the mud weight, the viscosity over the course to ensure that we are cleaning it as the day goes on.
Yep. Yeah, and they're taking other samples. They're taking mud weight, both incoming and outgoing. So by taking the mud weight of going out to the drill, what they're doing is seeing how clean they're getting it. They're taking a sand content test kit. You know, again, how much sand am I removing? So they're taking viscosity. Yes, they're checking the viscosity, but that's not telling you how clean you're getting your mud. It's just what is my conditions or my carrying capacities.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important topic to hit on, is that, you know, there's more to this. When you're looking at utilizing a recycler on a project, it's more than just using it as a mixing system. I mean, it's a piece of equipment that you have to monitor throughout the day, and you have to do your routine mud checks to really understand whether or not the reclaimer is doing and performing to its maximum capacity. Because if it's not, then you're really, you know, defeating the purpose of having that reclaimer there.
Thank you for joining us again in our Fluid Management Let's Talk Shop series. If you have further questions on mud recycling or reclaimers, reach out to your local Vermeer dealer or visit Vermeer.com.